Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us today. Look, if you've ever found yourself 3 hours deep into a doom scroll when you definitely should be working, or maybe hitting snooze for the fifth time while your gym bag just sits there judging you from the corner, yeah, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to challenge pretty much everything you thought you knew about productivity. We'll be breaking down some really fascinating insights from behavioral psychology and experts like Nick Wignall to show you how to actually build discipline, even if you consider yourself incredibly lazy. So let's get right into it. All right, I want to kick things off with a question that might sound totally backwards. What if trying to out-discipline your laziness is actually the root of the problem? You know, we all constantly fight against our own willpower, but the truth is, and our sources back this up, willpower is an incredibly unreliable tool. Your brain is quite literally wired to seek immediate comfort. So hey, it's not actually your fault. If skipping a tough, annoying task means you get to stay cozy on the couch with absolutely zero immediate consequences, well, your brain is going to choose that easy, painless option every single time. Think about all that standard advice you see floating around the internet. It usually tells you to just, try harder or dig deep for some hidden internal motivation, or worse, punish yourself when you inevitably mess up. But here's the reality check. Willpower is just inherently flaky. When the lazy, undisciplined choice is still the absolute easiest option sitting right there in front of you, all the mental toughness in the world probably won't save you. We literally cannot just bully ourselves into being consistent. So let's move into section 1, clarifying your true values. To actually fix this whole discipline issue, we have to look at the internal stuff first. Psychologist Nick Wignall is a huge champion of this inside-out approach. He points out something really crucial. It is nearly impossible to be disciplined about something you don't genuinely care about, because your internal alignment completely dictates your external actions. That's exactly why he tells us to consider procrastination as a well-intentioned, though sometimes mistaken friend. Think about it. Most of us treat procrastination like a mortal enemy, right? The second we want to put a task off, we start beating ourselves up with self-criticism. But Wignall argues that this just makes you feel worse and completely tanks whatever motivation you had left. Instead, we have to reframe it. Procrastination isn't a demon. It's often just an internal signal from your own mind trying to tell you something really important. So what exactly is that signal trying to say? More often than not, it's pointing straight to values misalignment. This happens when you are grinding away on goals that just do not actually matter to you. We're really good at fooling ourselves into thinking we should care about certain things, like a specific career path or looking a certain way, usually because we're just mimicking what other people want. And here's the kicker. A lack of discipline is very often just a symptom of that exact misalignment. Because when you're chasing something that genuinely matters to you, you tap into this massive, deep reservoir of intrinsic motivation. And suddenly, you realize you don't actually need nearly as much forced discipline as you thought. That brings us to section 2, designing a lazy-proof environment. But okay, what happens when your values are perfectly aligned, but you still just don't feel like doing the work that day? Well, once the internal stuff is clear, we have to transition to the physical world. You've got to design your environment so that making the lazy choice is just incredibly annoying. Let's look at a classic example, waking up early. If you're the kind of person who smacks the snooze button like it owes you money, the standard advice says you just need a stronger reason to wake up. No, the real problem is that staying in your warm bed is still the easiest option available. So try this. Put your alarm all the way across the room. Put a glass of water right next to it and force yourself into physical movement by making your body actually get out of bed to kill the alarm and then drinking that water since you're already standing there. You've basically forced physical discomfort on yourself. Going all the way back to bed suddenly feels like a huge hassle. Boom, you've just lazy-proofed your morning. And you can totally apply this to your daily focus too. I absolutely love this highly relatable example from our sources. You sit down at your desk to finally get some work done, and then suddenly, whoops, you're in a 20-minute YouTube rabbit hole about why the Cars movie universe is actually a post-apocalyptic capitalist dystopia. Look, we have all been there. So, what's the solution? You make the distraction physically annoying to access. Take your phone, power it completely down, and leave it in another room. By manually removing that distraction, the act of getting up, walking down the hall, and waiting for the whole thing to boot back up, it's usually just too much of an inconvenience. In this case, your own natural laziness is actually what keeps you on task. Moving right along to section 3, leveraging consequences and accountability. Now, sometimes just making things physically inconvenient isn't quite enough to keep us in line. When that natural motivation starts to dip, we can actually borrow some really cool concepts from behavioral psychology to manufacture immediate consequences and raise the stakes. A super crucial concept here is loss aversion. This is a foundational psychological principle that basically says human beings will fight to avoid losing money way, way more intensely than they will ever work to earn it. In behavioral psychology, this ties into the inversion of the second law of behavior change, which is just a fancy way of saying if you want a good habit to actually stick, you need to make the bad option genuinely painful. It turns out immediate pain shapes our behavior far more effectively than some delayed future reward. So how do we actually apply that to our lives? Let's use the very visceral example of $10. If you really want to start working out, but you just keep skipping it, tell a friend you'll send them $10 every single time you miss a session. Or honestly, even better, set it up so that money gets donated to an organization or a cause you actively dislike. Suddenly, skipping the gym isn't just this casual, I'll just go tomorrow kind of thing. It instantly becomes a financially painful, immediate loss. You're taking the consequences of laziness and dragging them right into the present moment. Another incredibly powerful way to create those immediate stakes is through social accountability. And that brings us to body doubling. Look, at the end of the day, humans are deeply social creatures. We really care about what other people think, even if we love to pretend we don't. And research actually backs this up, showing that simply having someone else present in the room with you, even if it's just virtually on an online co-working session, measurably improves your task performance. When you promise to give an update to someone you respect, suddenly, slacking off goes from being this quiet, private failure to being flat-out embarrassing. This is exactly why accountability groups work so well. Literally, nobody wants to be the one person in the group who didn't do the thing. But hey, you can even create these stakes just with yourself. Studies show that people who set their phone wallpaper to a specific goal-related image are significantly more likely to actually follow through. And the reason why makes total sense. Every single time you open your phone to mindlessly scroll, you are immediately hit with a constant, totally unavoidable visual reminder of what you should be doing. It instantly raises your own personal stakes and, frankly, just makes quitting feel a little bit foolish. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the stick, but let's pair all that with a little bit of carrot. We do this through something called temptation bundling. This is where you deliberately attach a specific reward to a habit that you're trying to build. Our sources highlight a really hilarious but incredibly effective example. Picture this tough gym rat who only lets himself watch his favorite romance anime after he finishes his workout. By tying a genuinely tough habit together with a guilty pleasure, you're making the difficult thing the absolute path of least resistance to get the reward you crave. It is an amazing trick for creating unbreakable consistency. I do have to give you a quick loophole warning here, though. Your brain is smart and it will actively try to cheat whatever system you build. Remember that alarm clock across the room? Well, your brain might try to hide a second pillow near it the night before so you can just lie down on the floor and cover your ears. Or maybe you get way too overconfident and you set your financial punishment absurdly high, like $100 a pop. Then, when you inevitably skip a day, you're just broke, angry, and totally demoralized, so you just refuse to follow the system anymore. You have to start with manageable discomfort, and you've got to be ready to constantly outsmart yourself the second you find one of these sneaky little loopholes. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Redefining True Discipline. Pulling all of these insights together really requires a fundamental shift in how we view ourselves and what we're capable of. We need to start cultivating an empowered, high-agency mindset, which is really just a deep, unshakable belief in your own ability to make positive changes. You know, people who seem highly disciplined don't actually possess some superhuman level of focus. They just have incredibly strong self-belief, which they built by taking tiny actions before they even felt ready. If you're an anxious high achiever, try asking yourself this. Imagine doing something wildly audacious. Okay, what is the 1% version of that? Nick Wignall uses this specific coaching question to help people identify these tiny, totally actionable risks. Taking just that 1% step is exactly how you build the agency required for true long-term discipline. And please remember, the goal here is absolutely not superhuman perfection. Look, extreme gets results. If you set up a system that feels a little bit extreme, like literally paying your friend $10 a day or locking your phone away, and discipline wins 8 out of 10 times simply because being lazy has finally become too inconvenient, that is a massive win. Real discipline isn't about perfectly willing yourself to do the right thing 100% of the time, not at all. It's simply about building smart systems where making the right choice is easier and making the wrong choice is an absolute hassle. Which leads us right to our final parting thought for today. Are you actually lacking discipline, or are you just lacking honesty? It's a pretty provocative question, isn't it? But the experts tell us that almost without exception, the real work isn't about just forcing more willpower. It's about getting radically honest with ourselves about what we actually value in life and getting really honest about how easy we make it for ourselves to fail. It's time to stop relying on sheer willpower. clarify what actually matters to you, lazy-proof your environment, and raise those stakes. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this gives you a totally new way to tackle your biggest goals starting today.